And welcome back to the Hot Lap. We are talking Flexi Wings 2025 and the truth behind the Flexi Wing saga for the upcoming year in Formula One. So it's all inspired by this article on motorsport.com, why the FIA's Flexi Wing U-turn might backfire. But let's rewind a bit first, though, to a few days ago when the FIA introduced Flexi Wing clampdown during the 2025 F1 season. Yeah, its governing bodies introduced a new load test. They were there last year, but they decided not to change them, much to the upset of Red Bull and other teams. If you remember, McLaren had a very flexible wing, particularly in Azerbaijan at the Baku track. But the FIA said on Friday, this is last week, that the scope of the rear wing test on the car will be increased from the start of the campaign in Australia, March 16th. There is a but. Additionally, and this is it, the front wing test will come into force from the Spanish Grand Prix on the 1st of June. The FIA said, following analysis, and let's zoom into that so you can read it with me, following analysis carried out by the FIA single-seater department, after the conclusion of the 2024 season, we are committed to ensure that bodywork flexibility is no longer a point of contention for the 2025 season. At least that's what the FIA said. Now, the governing body said the phased approach was to allow teams to adapt without the need to discard existing components unnecessarily, because they would have, let's be fair, like Red Bull, like all the other teams, they would have invested a lot or a significant amount of money and, now as we know, their budget in terms of the budget cap in these potential flexible wings. These adjustments, it said, are aimed at further refining our ability to monitor and enforce bodywork flexibility regulations, ensuring a level playing field for all competitors to promote fair and exciting racing. Fair and exciting racing? Okay. So the move is something of a U-turn, though, for the FIA, who said last month it was not planning to make any changes to the front wing test. It was kind of, I guess, waiting for the 2026 season. And the word of the year, the word of last year, aeroelasticity, otherwise known as Flexi Wings, just called it Flexi Wings, has been a hot topic for some time in the sport. It says where teams are constantly pushing the rules limits. Yes, they were. Red Bull admittedly had these Flexi Wings back in the Red Bull Sebastian Vettel era, didn't they? And everyone complained, but they passed the tests. Very similar to McLaren last year. But front and rear wings that pass static tests that are subsequently seen to flex at speed have triggered several controversies. And it says here, McLaren modified their rear wings on their cars after talks with the FIA at the Singapore Grand Prix. Excuse me. Last September. Now, the interesting thing about that is McLaren, by the rules, like Red Bull, back in the the 2010s, let's say, were not doing anything wrong by the rules. They were passing the test. It was a kind of like, yeah, okay, we will do that for you. And McLaren said their wing, compelled with the regulations, had passed all FIA deflection tests, but they'd agreed those minor adjustments. I just predicted what they were going to say. And it added that the front wing had been a challenging area for years because of aerodynamic loading patterns varied between teams, and said it had the right to introduce tests if irregularities were suspected. Now on to the article, which obviously inspired this video and me and us to talk to you today. The governing body's decision to impose stricter Formula One wing tests. So the governing body decision is going to impose those stricter Formula One wing tests, which we just talked about, but it's going to delay them 1st of June, Spanish Grand Prix. And it's saying that it may not achieve its goals. So the FIA have changed its stance by imposing stricter tests on their front wings, which this is something which we already know. It has been a talking point. Until late last season, the single-seater director, Nicholas Tobias, said the FIA was satisfied with the current, if admittedly imperfect, static load tests. So that's good. The practice was identified as a key factor keeping the current generation of stiff ground effect cars balanced across high and low speed corners. That's why we had them. Following rival complaints, the FIA installed, if you remember, the cameras, I think particularly at Spa, and stickers to show the movements of these wings and how much it did. And let's be fair, they did, particularly the McLarens with their, what was it called, mini DRS. But the FIA have made a U-turn after further analysis late last year, informed the teams that it would be changing the tests all for all of 2025. Tweaks to the rear wing test are coming from the start of the season in Melbourne. Yes, we are starting in Melbourne with a clampdown on front wing flexing. Following, and I think this is the slightly controversial as well, race 9. So not quite halfway into the season, but definitely into the second, definitely the first third, after the first third of the season. Race 9 of the season on the 1st of June. The governing body's main desire is to stop the endless discussions about the subject, which dominated agendas in the set. I mean, let's be fair. Teams finger point anyway. I mean, it's kind of like, I've always thought, throw enough mud and hope it sticks. The rear wing test is changing from race 1, but it's understood to be largely an exercise in codifying the changes the FIA made when they essentially asked McLaren to sort their wings out. And that was the mini DRS saga in Azerbaijan. But the big ticket, they're saying, remains the front wing test change, with a much reduced tolerance for flexing on the FIA's measuring points. A reduction by 1/3. That's interesting, isn't it? That is interesting. So the FIA. So why has this been delayed till June? Well, the FIA stated that the changes are staggered so that teams who are planning to carry over their 2024 designs, granted, wouldn't be forced discarding their wings and developing new ones. But the problem is they've already developed new ones, I imagine, or slightly modified ones for the beginning of the year. But Motorsport.com understands the stricter tests were initially planned for the start of the season. But there's been significant lobbying from some teams who had already developed Flexi Wings to delay. I mean, there we go. Initially until Imola and then until Barcelona. So the teams have already done it. I mean, it's kind of like moving the goalpost in some ways, isn't it? Yes, we don't want Flexi Wings, but the way this has been introduced, it should have been like halfway through last season introduced, but they're doing it in 2025, not now. Once again, the FIA, complete joke. Reports that teams like Red Bull are surprised or even furious about the changes are believed to be wide off the mark, as these tweaks were the subject of discussion for some time. So teams knew they were coming and had enough time to react. Okay, I kind of take a bit of it back. But apart from the FA being a joke, let's be honest, they are. But in certain corners, there is still a need over their staggered introduction with a comprehension front wing clampdown coming, 9 races. That's just for me what's so weird, especially if the teams already knew about it. On one hand, it allows teams to integrate to the FIA's intervention into their early season development cycle, with a circuit like Barcelona often the scene of a big upgrade packaged in the past. They have been. Even I think, what is it, 2002, Ferrari introduced their new car in Barcelona, if I remember. Now, on the other hand, some smaller teams who haven't fully caught on with Flexi Wings feel like the delayed change bakes in the advantage of those who are at the forefront of a practice the FIA clearly see the need to clamp down on. And while not forcing teams to make changes from race 1, it can be seen as a way to help teams by not having them throw away carryover designs, even though they kind of are by getting rid of them anyway, I guess. But some of those midfielders will actually have fewer changes to make than, for example, the likes of McLaren and Mercedes, and therefore would have benefited, they're saying. So, yeah, I mean, that's true. Will then the grid close up a bit? Maybe. If that is the case, though, that would be absolutely amazing. The other aspect is the looming prospect of wholesale regulation changes for 2026, which is already forcing teams to split their resources and attention. Yeah, and that's going to be a big one. I mean, so for example, if you're Red Bull, Mercedes, or McLaren or Ferrari, and it looks like you're going to win the championship or have a fight for the championship down to the last round, surely you would give everything to win that championship, then the possibility of winning a championship of 2026. Ergo, the big issue with that, though, is having a good run into 2026 like Red Bull could stand you in good stead for the next 1, 2, 3 years. Just look at Red Bull. It's going to be a risk either way, isn't it? So they're going to have to change their front wings by June, and it might be unwelcome and an expensive distraction for squads that were looking to shift gears into 2026 at an early age. And it's got here, how much will this affect teams in the title race? Well, that's exactly what we've been talking about. But it depends on who you ask, they're saying. The source called the change proper and was adamant that the teams involved, along with McLaren and Mercedes, also believed to include the likes of Aston Martin and Alpine. They're going to have to make significant changes in order to comply, not just the front wing, but also the all-important floor and the front wing design. Given the upturn in performance that turned it from a midfielder to a world champion, a lot of attention will be on how McLaren starts the 2025 season. So have McLaren been screwed? And on how it will then be able to react to the change from Spain onwards. Conspiracy theorists, get on your tinfoil hats. Is this similar to the 2020 to the 2021 championship rule change with the whole rate thing, where Mercedes were penalised and Red Bull gained lots and eventually won at least one of the 2 championships, albeit controversially? I mean, is that the case? I don't think it is, but, you know, it's going to come out there, isn't it? It's going to come out there. So a lot of people are going to be looking at McLaren, with the team keen to successfully defend its constructors without compromising its 2026 ambitions. But with the current solution, what will the current solution do to ensure that 2025 will be a two-pronged championship and flexing wings will remain a talking point, precisely the opposite of what the FIA envisaged? Once again, the FIA equals useless. And while mid-season regulation tweaks through technical directives are not that uncommon, in this case, they could have been avoided. Yes, they could have been, motorsport.com, by either clamping down earlier or letting the issue go through the final year of the current rule set. Yes, yes, yes. Yes, with the FIA meddling around. Ultimately, the end result of months of discussion is a compromise, one that we don't really want in Formula One, at least we don't here. And as is often the case in F1, a compromise isn't designed to make everyone happy, upsets everyone. It's designed to make the least number of people unhappy, but let's be honest, at some point everyone's going to be upset throughout this season. Having said that, fingers crossed, let's still hope it is going to be an absolutely awesomely fantastic season. That's a Ferrari front wing. So if you made it to the end, you're absolutely amazing. Just by clicking on this video is more than enough for us. But if you want to do that bit extra, if you are not subscribed, please hit that subscribe button. That would give us a massive smile, that notification button, so you do not miss a video. But also, if you want to do a bit extra, hit that like button, comment below, let us know what you think about these Flexi Wings, and no doubt we will speak to you soon. Thank you very much. And above always, stay safe.